Hello everybody, Gliderman here. So today we're kicking off the episode 1 of Gliderman Rambles. Today's topic will be on Fauxgramming, as I'm going to call it. And while this may be a bit cynical and whatnot, of a little bit of a podcast ramble thing, it's something that I kind of feel is important, and if you don't feel is very important, that's perfectly fine. You can have your own opinion. These are just mine, and if you want to listen to my opinions, feel free to listen. So, what do I mean by Fauxgramming? Well, pretty much it refers to drag and drop and basically easy to get into languages that don't really have any practical application outside of a very basic first step for somebody to take. And I will admit, I have used some of these languages. Would I say they were necessary for getting me started? Possibly. Possibly, but only because they were easier to access, and I'll probably touch on that a little bit later. But the main point is that the drag and drop languages kind of give you a false sense of skill, and that's kind of questionable, like whether that's like a good thing. Like, yes, you have somebody interested in it, but they don't actually have any real skill at it. And that can kind of be, like, annoying. Or at least from my perspective. Your perspective, it may be a benefit. I don't know. Whatever. You can have your opinions, I have my opinion. But, like, it's kind of annoying because, like, I created, or let's just say somebody created, I don't know, let's just say using Scratch, which is quite a popular drag and drop language that allows primarily games to be created. Previously, it was an application that you could download and save the projects directly to your computer, and now I think with Scratch 2.0 they've moved to a cloud-based thing. But you have to have an account to save your projects, and that's kind of probably an old thing by now, but whatever. They've moved to a cloud-based thing where it's drag and drop, but I mean, it has a little game window. It's like probably like 400 by 300 pixels. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on the resolution, but it's a little game thing with drag and drop language. Somebody can probably pretty quickly create a game with that. Way back when, I created like this side scroller. And that was using the desktop application, not the cloud stuff. I created a side scroller, and yes, that was interesting. But it wasn't really like big and powerful. So now I'm more so writing bigger Java programs and Objective-C programs. No, I still haven't moved over to Swift yet. I probably will eventually, but I'm going to wait for Apple to settle on the syntax of Swift and all the idiosyncrasies that it has. So these programs can do a lot more than you would really be able to do at all with the drag and drop. But you get people with the illusion that they can build anything using the drag and drop. And that may kind of be true to a certain extent. It can be easier to do those things with the graphics work in a drag and drop language with those built up frameworks that go around it. Let's just say with Java, you kind of have to do it a little bit more brute force way, where you have to go through the paint methods unless you're using some external framework as well. But it's kind of like they have a much easier time showing that they have something like really powerful, but it's not quite as impressive, and that probably kind of sounds like I'm very annoyed at it, and I mean, partially I am, but whatever, you know? But when you get to that point where it's like, here we have some young child that has this, rudimentary game, because really that's all I was able to pull off with Scratch. If you go too large, you just start to have a bunch of frame rate dips, there starts to become logic errors, and it all kind of starts to break down. So you can't actually have anything really large and complete in it. That side scroller I actually had to give up on because it wasn't able to move the images around well enough. But with something like the Java or Objective-C, unless it's something that's like interactive with an audience, you kind of get pushed to the side, which is kind of annoying because really there aren't enterprise applications really built with drag and drop languages. It's all with actual programming languages. And I mean, there may be some drag and drop like logic circuit design, but that's a little bit of a different thing, and I'm not going to cover that. But another of the drag and drop languages that you may be familiar with, because I believe most of my audience so far is coming from LEGO Mindstorm's EV3 programming. So feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. That's just what I'm guessing so far. There was the NXT-G, which is what the LEGO Mindstorm's NXT came with, and it was the LEGO graphical drag and drop stuff. I'd imagine the EV3 stuff is also called like EV3G, though I'm not sure of the actual name there. I haven't really touched that too much. So that is also another example, and that's also going to segue into some other stuff that I'm going to be talking about as well. But that's another prime example of, I made this program that does like the robot spins in a circle. That can be viewed at like very much as, this is amazing. It's a robot spinning in a circle. I don't really care. One of the things that Playhost does, which is a firmware replacement for the NXT or EV3, and even RCX, which was the previous thing to the NXT, that can do so much more. But where it loses people is that it's an actual programming language. And that's kind of why I try to teach that on the channel a little bit, which, as you're most likely from those videos, that's kind of where I tried to go. Where, it's good to get an actual practical programming language and actually be able to see it in use and be able to use it to program your robots. But, I mean, one of the things that people overlook with the drag and drop is that there's really no control. Like, all you've really got is like time and maybe tacho movements, or reading the tachometer and moving the motors to a certain point. But that's really it. And it can get bloated enough because there's so much stuff. And by the way, I'm not trying to say LEGO did a terrible job with the kit or anything. I think the kit's fantastic. It's just that the drag and drop and the way it's used isn't quite how I like, which I guess is kind of, my opinion, but whatever, that's what you're here for. You listen to my opinion. But it gets to the point where it's bloated enough that it actually starts to lose accuracy from what little you had. And not many people realize that because they're just drag and drop programmers. they aren't actual programmers who care about accuracy, even though a much more accurate robot is what they want. They just haven't been exposed to programming or even it working super precisely. And that's kind of what I try to teach a little bit. Or more so, kind of used to teach. Started to run out of topics that were easy enough to cover in a video. But with the Legos, you could actually have very precise movement. So, we'll just take, for example, a simple two-wheeled robot with a caster wheel in the back. So the two front motors are controlled by two different motors as well. Or the two front wheels are controlled by two different motors. There we go. That type of robot can be very hard in the drag and drop to get to turn 90 degrees, which is quite common, where you want to turn a precise amount. It can be hard to, say, go forward a certain amount. And then with the Legos, with built-in math that it can do, it can really easily do all of that and more. So you can tell it the track width between the wheels, and you can tell it the diameter of the wheels, and it will automatically compute all of these movement commands for you. And not many people know that the Lego Mindstorms can really do that, because really, by most people, it's viewed as a toy. And I mean, yes, it kind of is. It's not really meant for, like, armies to use to carry supplies. I mean, that's not quite what it's for. But it can do so much more than what people have come to expect of it. That's like, you're missing out. I mean, it can do so much cool stuff. Like, we'll take, you're trying to get from point A to point B on a room. Okay, well, if you had, let's just say, mapped out the room previously, you could actually have it find a path through the room in a way that won't hit the walls, and that it will automatically go from waypoint to waypoint to waypoint that it's generated. That's pretty dang cool. Where you can just say, go from here to here. And I have a video on that as well, using the NXT. I think I called it like the car project or something. I'll probably have a card to it up in the corner if you want to check that out. But it's ridiculously simple to do that. And these drag and drop programmers, which I know you may have been, and maybe you're looking to switch, maybe you're not, but you just don't get exposed to everything that it can do. You're limited to literally thinking inside a box. You can't go outside of them. You can't do really weird stuff with it and, like, make it do precise spins, I should say. Like, you just don't ever know that you can. And I'm also going to touch on a couple other more official programming languages now that I kind of have probably different than most other people's opinions on. But then again, if you're here, you're probably interested in listening to my opinions. However, here we go. So, Python. And I'm really hoping I don't anger the horde here. But Python was a pretty nice and simple programming language that kind of aimed to get more people interested in programming, but wasn't drag and drop. Or it could get people interested in programming, and it wasn't drag and drop. And it's, pretty dang simple to learn, but it's grown to the point where people were actually writing full-fledged programs in it. And to me, that kind of seems to not be the point of it. To me, it's more of a scripting language. It's not, again, in my opinion, not really designed to be something that you write complete programs with. It's great for teaching beginners Hello World and getting something dumped to the console and being able to mess around with it and play with it. But it is then used to write full-fledged programs. And to me, that just seems very weird. Those full-fledged programs won't be as fast as other programming languages, or more so, any other programming languages that are compiled on the fly, like Python is. Because Python is never compiled into, let's just say, Java jars. It's never compiled into EXEs. There may be wrappers for it, but it's always on the fly computing. It's never optimized for a processor. The computer, while running it, has to go through line by line, parsing it out. And that can be a little bit, of a hit on performance. I hope I didn't really anger too many Python people there, but I just had to mention that. And it's almost the same with Arduino libraries, where you got something that's pretty dang simple to get into, but then you don't really write any code. Okay, maybe that's not quite as similar to Python as I was really thinking, but with Arduino libraries, there's so much out there that all you know how to do is put two libraries together and get a working thing. Great for prototyping, but it kind of just seems like you aren't making anything. You're always cobbling something together. That just seems weird. Like, where did the I'm going to write a program go? It's now with the Arduino, how can I combine these different parts together? And I know there are some people that do write, like, complete Arduino programs, and that's cool. But it just seems like there's this huge flood of libraries, and, I mean, it's also pretty nice that so many people have made these libraries. But it just seems to kind of be missing the point of programming. So I think I'm going to start to wrap this up now. So I hope you guys at least kind of found this interesting, me talking about Fauxgramming. I would really recommend learning a real programming language, and that can probably be whatever definition you want it to be. But in my opinion, that would be something like all the different variants of C, Java, and that kind of stuff. I mean, there's probably some other than that that I'm missing. But, get into something that you're typing, because that's kind of what you need in order to write an actual program in the real world. Not everything will be drag and drop. Not everything will be holding your hand, like with the Arduino libraries. It's all going to be things where you have to write something. And that's kind of what I've been doing now. I mean, I don't really have much that I can share with you guys, but I'm in the middle of a big massive project that I'm writing in Java. It's all new stuff. It hasn't been done before. There is nothing for you to base it off of. There is nothing out there like the drag and drop. It's like, oh, well, I just simply put these bits together. There's nothing like that. It's all new stuff. And that's kind of how it is. So, I hope you guys found this interesting, and I encourage you guys to get into programming, and I'll see you next time. Bye!